go. Now that's in much better condition than we first thought. So, 17, I think it's Imperial. I made these engine beds up to make a bit of a copy of what we have in Sarah Ann, so I've got the precise dimensions, because to be honest with you, right up to this point I wasn't even 100% sure it was going to fit in the boat. I've just been restoring some of the brackets that were heavily rusted and cleaned them up and put some epoxy primer on them. That's probably as far as I'll go. I need to get it reasonably level and square and align where the shaft would approximately be, but it's amazing that it's ended up, you know, not too far off the mark. The alternator has to be refitted, and so that's what these brackets are all about. And there's the alternator sitting there, and then install the exhaust system temporarily. What else needs doing? Oh, and the electrics. Connect up the switch for the electrics and the gauges, and then I'll be able to give her a bench run, warm her up, and then I can change the oil. So that's the plan. So these little brackets, which is sort of lightly galvanised, and they quite heavily rusted. So I've cleaned them right back and put some epoxy primer on there, and hopefully they'll be enough to hold the rust back. So I need to get the alignment of that belt right. If you don't get that alignment right, it chews up belts, and it used to chew them up for breakfast. So we'll leave that mobile there for a minute, because that bolt's got a collar on it for whatever reason. It's been repurposed, I'd say. But with that there, as long as there's sufficient clearance underneath the alternator, that'll be fine. The engine came with a nice set of spare parts, but I've got a feeling that this belt is too long. The one that was on it was too long. Okay, we have a belt fit. Now the reason I wanted that firm, hopefully not too firm, is that we're limited for space here between the side of the fiddles on the edge of the bench seat. So that's probably why that one hasn't been on there, because that's a bit too tight. I've got my new high bay lighting installed, given to me by my brother, and it's amazing. So we've now got real task lighting. So we've got the exhaust coming out there, so it has a muffler, there's a water lock, goes back under here. I've got to do something about the way that that reducer works there. And then the fuel system, I installed a new fuel filter just because I had one, not because it particularly needed one. And then the cooling system consists of a hose into a 20 litre container, which I can turn the hose on so it doesn't empty too quickly. And there's the old original fuel tank, which is dripping away there. And then I have the electrical system, starter panel, with a kill switch there, which turns out to be a kill switch, not a start switch. And then I replaced some of the wiring here and tidied this all up because it was a horrible mess and there was arcing across here. We repaired that right, which meant that the tacho then worked. Put a new fan belt on it, got a new oil filter for it, got a little leak in the cooling systems, leaking a little bit of coolant back into the head exchanger, and then that's exiting with the wet exhaust, so that needs to be fixed. So I'll probably just tighten a few of these bolts and see if that's enough. I don't really want to have to take it off and create new gaskets for it. And then it's pretty much ready to go in the boat. So I reckon another day's tinkering around on it, and mainly just reorganising the workshop, and then I'll be ready to lift the old one out, which is currently suspended there. I've got to see it in there. And then lift the new one in. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I'll find a way. I'm finally back from Devonport for the last time, I believe. Went back there to repair the cradle on the slip, where we broke a little protective piece off. So we repaired that yesterday, and really that took me out of action for most of yesterday. I did a little bit of organising here, but I've come into the workshop this morning and I've just spent an hour or so just getting back to a clear workbench. And so now I'm thinking about what's next. So I've got this little box of spares here. I've got an oil filter, fuel filter we don't need to change. I've checked the impeller and it's working beautifully, and it looks terrific. So don't need to replace that. V-belts, I've got a feeling that one's too short, but the one I've got on there is quite short, but it's doing the job. But the main thing today is I want to have a look at this switch here, because the kill switch is not working. It was working, but now it's not working. So I'm thinking it's possibly the ignition switch. So I've got this spare ignition switch here, which I'm going to try out and see if that solves the problem. So the issue is that when I press this button, if the engine's running, it should activate the solenoid here, and this is the fuel kill, and it should activate that, so it should pull that in, but it's not doing that. And I've checked out the solenoid itself is fine, and I've checked out the kill switch here, and it's working fine. So the problem, as I said, is either in the wiring, which is possible, or it's in the switch here itself. Now I'm going to remove the switch and then transfer these wires across one by one, so I'll make sure that I get them in the right places. I have got a wiring diagram that I found, so it's a Massey Ferguson starting switch. Turn this on. Everything should light up except this one, which has got a broken globe in it. Now, if all things equal, I should push this and it should go click, but it's not going click, so it wasn't the switch. I'm not pretending to know very much about all this, but I guess you learn through trial and error over the years, but just this is the way I go about tracking down a problem and eliminating it. So I want to make sure that every single connection is perfect. Problem solved. I'll show you what happened, but it was a wiring issue. Got the water turned on, and away she goes. Press the stop button, and she stops. Trying to control the amount of water going into my reservoir here. We're just emptying stuff out. able to finish the job and make sure that it's coated the same colour all the way through to the switch, which was not how it was before, and that creates all manner of confusion. So one. And here's my day's work. So I cut 3 metres out of the wiring loom. I fixed the problem with the kill switch with the help of Brent Kennedy, who dropped in just in a very timely manner, and we managed to trace everything through and solve the problem. So this is all nice and organised, so all terminated properly and secured in a way that it's not going to wear out and arc up against something. We've tidied up things, shortened the wiring loom, put all the connections back together, checked everything on here. So this, my friends, is what you call a moment of truth. Let's try that again. One little yellow thing there, so blow and I'm building on yesterday's success. I've got the motor running, and now I've got to clear some space for it in Sarah Ann so that I can install it. And that requires taking the boat out of the shed, lowering the Volvo down to the ground, swapping it over on the dolly and lifting the Kubota up. In the meantime, I've got to clean up the engine bay and get the bilge painted. So big day ahead. Well, that's a case of nearly. So I got the engine up nicely without any drama whatsoever, a bit of creaking and groaning, but then I looked up above and my engineering was not quite up to that load, so I'm going to have to lower it back down and strengthen things up there, lest it all come down in a horrible crash. It's a wonderful thing when a plan comes together, but when it doesn't, ooh. And a couple of problems with the attachment point that I've got the endless chain on there. Never mind, I'll lower it back down very gingerly and strengthen what's happening up overhead. So I've got a bit of 5/8 shafting stainless through a piece of 1-inch aluminium tube just to stiffen it up a little bit. Look at that, it didn't stiffen it quite enough. Now it's not in any danger of falling, but certainly not what I wanted to achieve. So I got to lower the engine back down into the abyss. This is the Mark 1 lifting gear. Not so successful. This is the Mark 2 lifting gear. Very successful. I think I'll stick with wood. Now that's working very nicely. Always attracts the crowd when you're pulling a motor out. Here's the classy Blackwood fit out, Blackwood and King Billy pine. So I got a bin there, which is for all of my rags and stuff. And then matched and fiddleback drawers. Means everything can be nicely organised in there now. And then I've got some pigeonholes which I'm using to store my drills. This is the original engine bed that I pulled out of Moran that the Kubota was mounted on. So it's got some strong points And one is that my brother had replaced 2 of the engine mounts, so these ones are as good as new. These ones are much older and firmer. You can see that there's a lot of flex here, very firm there. So what I'm thinking is that I think the majority of the torque is at the flywheel end. Maybe someone else got a different idea about that, but I think most of the torque is applied there. So I'll put these 2 new flexible ones forward, and then these ones I'll clean them up, and providing they're structurally sound when I take them apart and have a look at them, I'll put the 2 older ones here as the rear engine mounts. Now, I won't know until I get in there and do some measurements exactly whether this engine is going to, fit without major modifications. I think there are some pretty significant mods that I've got to make. So for a start, you can see that I've taken the floor out with this whole engine bed, and you can see that she was fairly flat, whereas Sarah Ann is very shaped. So all that's got to come off. I'll probably dispense with the steel. It's possible I might be able to reuse that in some way, shape or form. But so the jury's out on that. And then I have to rebuild the actual mounts, which were quite, what could I say, savaged in the process of putting the Volvo in there from the original Simplex. Now let's get started. So I've got to clean up a fair bit of rust on these. I've got a couple of brackets somewhere which I still haven't located them, but I know I did take the brackets out. So the whole story about this new little Kubota, or new to me Kubota, which I'm putting in Sarah Ann, has been nothing but one blessing after another. Yeah, there have been some challenges, but what are the chances that the Polyflex fittings that were on Moran are exactly the same spec as the fittings that are on Sarah Ann? Apart from the fact that there were some Imperial bolts on Moran, and these ones, actually they are, yeah, they are Imperial, but mine are coarse thread, and Moran has got fine thread on it. But that's okay, because these ones just go straight through, so I can use the ones off Sarah Ann. So, because coupling, so this is the coupling off Moran, this is the coupling off Sarah Ann, so I've taken this one off. It's exactly the same, but it's a bit older, so it's had a bit more wear, and I can see, no, I think it's 100%. But yeah, it has had a bit more wear. But these bolts are fine thread, whereas the ones on Sarah Ann are a coarse thread. So this was the coupling on Moran, and it's for a 5/8 shaft with a keyway in it. And this one's the one off Sarah Ann, which is for 7/8 shaft, which I bought with the new Polyflex fittings just a couple of years ago. So that's looking very nice. And I don't have to guess that this is going to fit, because this is the fitting off Sarah Ann. So just slip that onto the existing shaft. There's a few things just in terms of the overall dimensions of everything, which I'm going to have to check out. But yeah, I think I think pretty much she's a goer. Stop teasing the dog. I think Millie would like some orange, Denise. That's my wife, she's inside watching a bit of Netflix there, and the dog was moaning. I thought it was my wife moaning. Not that she ever moans, she's a lovely thing. So there we go. Probably should put a bit of grease on those first. But they'll have to come out again later, so but just for now, keen to make sure that it fits perfectly. So that's just straight on to the center and shaft, and as long as the shaft's long enough, gets the motor far enough forward, but I won't know that until I lift it in really. I just do those finger tight at the moment, so remember to grease them up. And there you go. So ready to sit in. Piecing together the jigsaw puzzle begins now. How to make this fit. I'm not really into jigsaws, but I am a bit prone to the Homer Simpson method, which you can probably guess that involves a bit of force here and there. I'm wearing a little reminder to be sun safe on my nose there today. So 7 stitches and a bit of my nose went away in a jar. Now I've moved these mounting points in, and now I've got a complication because I moved them in a little bit too far, but I wanted to get those in the centre of the engine mount of the bearers on Sarah Ann, and that's where they just needed to be, so I can work around that. It's just a bit of a juggle when I'm fitting it. And now I've got to translate that forward and drill a hole in this in these forward brackets so that I can get this mount in at that 330 wide mark there, so it sits just nicely on the bearers. So I have to take off the alternator, remove the bracket, and drill a hole and then replace all that. So next week I'll be publishing the rest of the installation. I was just a couple of weeks out from the Wooden Boat Festival at this stage, so the pressure was really on. You can help me by clicking like and subscribe, and I really love hearing from you, and I do reply to all your comments. It's been a very long journey to reach the festival. It started in early October when I thought I'll put her in the shed for a couple of weeks and spruce her up for the festival. Well, next thing you know, an opportunity came up to put a new motor in, and the rest is history. So it's going to take me a few weeks to catch up on the videos. But hang in there, we'll get there. The Australian Wooden Boat Festival was absolutely blinking amazing.